Hi, everyone. Sorry for the wait. Welcome to the Junior Fellows 2023 application season. This will be our information session to kind of just know more about the Foundry, who we are, the application process, an opportunity for everyone to ask some questions. So here's our agenda for today. We're going to do some introductions, give an overview of what the Foundry is, some of the expectations, describe what the Junior Fellows program is, because it's going to be a new fellowship that we're launching this year, go through the application process, and then have the opportunity for you all to ask questions, and then we'll be able to provide some answers, hopefully. So first is some introductions. One is that I can start. So my name is Lema Mohammed. I use she, her pronouns. I'm currently a senior associate at the Glen Echo Group, which is a public affairs firm in Washington, D.C. that specializes in tech policy. I graduated from American University in May of 2021. My background is primarily, quite literally, in tech policy. My major was sort of compromised in policy, and my minors were in computer science and information systems. And aside from the Foundry, I also volunteer at All Tech is Human, which is a nonprofit in New York. And at the Foundry, I not only am on the wonderful e-board with Ricky and Grant, but I also do in-person events for our New York City fellows. I help co-produce our podcast. I run all our social media. I try and do media relations with reporters for the Foundry. And I do all our social graphics. So all the fun things that you see on social media is 9 times out of 10 by me. And I will hand it over to Ricky to also give her introduction.
Thanks, Lama. Good morning, everyone. So happy to have you guys join us today. My name is Ricky George, and I'm the current executive board president for Class 4 of the Foundry. Outside of the Foundry, I work in the financial sector, leading the cyber exercise and wargame program for a large financial exchange. And I'm also getting my master's of science in cybersecurity with an emphasis in policy at Brown University. So I have a very cyber-focused background, and that's what drew me into the Foundry, is where internet law and policy intersect with cyber and national security issues, since I've been in the space for quite a while now. And so with the Foundry as president, I help work with alongside Lama and Grant on the e-board, as well as look at kind of some of the more administrative problems around, financing and all those important things that make the Foundry go. So really excited to have you all here today, and I'll hand it over to Grant.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. My name is Grant Versfeld. I'm Director of Operations on the 4th class of the Internet Law and Policy Foundry. And I'm mainly responsible there for taking care of our website, some of our online accounts, services, and basically helping up the e-board in any way that is needed. In my day job, I'm a security engineer in technical threat analysis for a major tech company. Previously, I was at the Tufts University in the Fletcher School, where I studied computer science and science, technology, and society. I do a number of other things in the tech policy space and also try to work in tech for public good. And I've been very excited to be part of the Foundry. So thank you for everyone coming today.
Awesome. As you can see, we have a variety of fellows. They come from different places. And to answer one of the questions in the chat, you absolutely do not need a law degree to be a fellow. None of us have law degrees. I actually applied the year after I got my undergraduate degree, so that's definitely not a given. So let's continue. So a little bit of an overview of the Foundry. Grant, do you want to take away?
Absolutely. So for those of you who don't know, the Internet Law and Policy Foundry is a professional development organization, and it's targeted for individuals who are early to mid-career in law, technology, and policy, working with a nexus to the internet or technology in some manner. Fellows who join us for 2 years before joining the global network of alumni. We are the 4th class of Internet Law and Policy Foundry Fellows, so there's a very healthy spread of alumni across the United States and elsewhere, with, again, a particular concentration in the DC area. A subset of the fellows who do join the Foundry get elected by their peers to join the executive board. All 3 of us today are on the e-board for our class, and the e-board's responsible for maintaining the Foundry, making its upkeep, running the events, and then ensuring that there's a smooth flow from one class to the next class. Fellows also oversee the direction and execution, as I said, of Foundry programming, including our key events such as the Tech Policy Grind podcast, CyberCon, the Policy Hackathon, and our annual Trivia Night. Awesome. Why the Foundry? So there's a lot of different reasons to join. All of us have come for a number of different reasons. And I think every person you speak to will say that they get something a little different out of their experience with the Foundry. Some of the biggest things that people come for, though, you can make and grow connections with the next generation of internet law and policy professionals. I think for me, that's one of the biggest aspects for why I'm excited to be part of this group. Everyone with whom I'm working here is just utterly brilliant, doing incredibly cool stuff, and is going to be making some waves down the road as they continue in their careers, and hopefully as I do with mine. You can also interact with notable alumni. Some notable Foundry fellows are working in places like the White House, CISA, and other key tech policy organizations. So it's a great opportunity to meet and greet those people. And also, again, just get to know the kind of general spread of individuals working in the space. You can also grow your professional platform and thought leadership. If you want to be part of our podcast, you can do that, which has a great following. You can speak at our events, host people who speak at other events. There's all sorts of opportunities, and it really can, again, just help you develop those professional skills. We also have enhanced professional development opportunities. We've been exploring a number of new endeavors in various spaces, particularly in the legal profession. Hopefully those can get going in the next few months, but there are lots of ways that we can do that. And if you have ideas, you're always welcome to bring them to us once you're part of the Foundry, and then we can pursue them from there. We also allow all fellows to attend the annual State of the Net conference for free. And that's something we're particularly excited about this year. We'll be having our own Foundry initiation weekend, and some more details will be forthcoming with that for people who are joining the Foundry.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Grant. And then we're going to go into a little bit about what the Junior Fellows program is. So this is going to be our 5th class of Internet Law and Policy Fellows, but the first class of our Junior Fellows. And the reason why we decided to start this program is originally senior fellows were elected over the course of 2 years. But in the 2-year time period, different people's lives can change. Some of us start school, some of us graduate from school, some of us get promoted, some of us move jobs. And our original commitment to the Foundry has changed. And because we're at such a great momentum, we want to be able to keep the process and speed and producing of activities at the same rate. And so we decided that if we brought in more fellows, we would be able to sort of steamroll our program at the same rate as we did in the last year, but also allow for a more smoother transition period from when our class graduates. In your second year, you already have a familiarity of how to run events, make graphics, use our social media, understand how podcasting works, and really be able to take the Foundry as your own with some additional support when you decide to recruit junior fellows. The only expectations of our junior fellows is that they have absolutely no pressure to do things on their own. We just expect them to show great commitment and interest into the activities that we do in order for this to really be successful. They will be a much smaller group. Our original class was about 90 fellows. We realized that this didn't allow for greater collaboration, and so we decided to make the class a little bit smaller to just 20 seats. And your other expectation will be that you engage in both virtual and in-person programming as you can, such as State of the Net. And then, as I said previously, like once your first year as a junior fellow is over, you'll be able to become a senior fellow and then just take the organization as you like. And then Ricky is going to go into the application process.
Awesome. Thanks, Lama. So as you all are probably aware and have seen across social and other places, our applications are open right now. A little bit about the process. The application requires a handful of things from you, and it's probably helpful to kind of get some of these things together and then go and fill out the application form with them. So basic info, right? Your name, email address, general location, and we're using location as a way to kind of understand where people are geographically. And then also professional affiliation. If you're a student, that's okay. If you're working kind of in a graduated, that's fine too. Just want to get a little bit of an understanding of kind of where you are and what work you're doing. And then we also want to see kind of what Foundry committees are you interested in? Because we are a collaborative fellow-run organization, we have a bunch of committees that meet on different cadences to get our programming across the finish line. So that could be communications, that could be events and partnerships. And of course, then for you guys, once you become senior fellows, the executive board will open up to those that are interested in being elected for those roles also. So, we just want to know where you're interested and where you're leaning. And then there's 2 written responses. I believe they're both 500 words maximum or approximate. And so one is just about, why do you want to be a Foundry Fellow? Why is the Foundry something that interests you? I think that's really important just for us to understand, what drew you into us and why it fits in with your career trajectory. And then also the second long form answer being, how will the Foundry community grow and expand with you as a fellow, right? So what are you thinking about that we're doing that you want to build upon? What's net new that you have some ideas about? I think that's really important as well. We want you guys to make the Foundry your own as much as it is ours. So that will help kind of fill in that. And then of course your resume or CV. And then this year, which is different from past application cycles, is professional references. Because the class is so small, I can tell you it's going to be competitive for selection. And we just wanted to use, professional references, whether they're teachers, managers, and things kind of in that lane, as an opportunity for us to, better determine a class that's highly competitive and make the, some selections there. Application outcomes will be communicated ahead of State of the Net. As Grant said, State of the Net attendance is free for fellows, which is exciting. But also what we're doing is an immersion or initiation weekend around State of the Net, where we're hoping all of the class of junior fellows, or as many as we can have in town during that period, will be here in DC and be able to actually attend not only State of the Net, but have some networking events with other fellows, current fellows, as well as alumni. So it's a really exciting and unique thing that I know the whole e-board is behind and looking forward to. And then lastly, just, logistical housekeeping. Keep your eye on the calendar. January 30th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern is when the applications close. And we're going to be really firm about that, just because there's a short turnaround of about a little over a month between applications closing and State of the Net. So that is what's kind of covered for the application process. And I think I'm also going to cover some FAQ items as well. Thanks, Lama. So we've had a bunch of questions come in, which is great. And hopefully if these are some of your questions, we're answering them up front. But of course, continue to throw things in the Q&A chat, and we'll open up for questions in just a moment here. One of the questions that we've gotten numerous times since we have asked where you are geographically and listed mostly US-based hubs for that, can international students apply? Absolutely. One of the things that we really looked at as an e-board was, where are fellows in terms of geographic distribution and where are they most active? And we've seen that to be within the United States. And so we want you to have a good experience. We don't want you to feel like, hey, you're always joining on Zoom. There's no one out near where you are. So we're kind of taking a hub-centric approach. So the hope will be, that if we have competitive applicants from a geography, that will become one of the hubs. And if that's in the US, great. If it's outside the US, awesome. So please do apply. Just because you're internationally based, don't see that as a deterrent at all. We just want to make sure that you guys as junior fellows have the best experience. Is the Foundry Fellowship paid? No, it's not. It's volunteer based. I think that's really important to know, but it does open up so many professional opportunities to have conversations with, cutting edge companies, to meet other fellows. I do think that even with it being a volunteer based experience, you can really open up a pipeline of opportunities for yourself, whether that's to move into a new job, strengthen, your understanding as you apply to graduate school. All of those things are possible. And I think it's great that you can do that here at the Foundry. When will you find out about your acceptance? We're going to be reviewing on a rolling basis. I would say on average, you're probably going to find out early February, the outcome of your application, so that we can communicate those ahead of State of the Net and get people arranged with travel and whatnot to come out here to DC. How many hours should you commit to the Foundry? It is variable, right? We have busier times of year, we have leaner times of year, but I think, 10 hours a week on average is accurate, especially with this junior class being small, much smaller than classes ahead of it. There's going to be an emphasis on people being active and available to support things with the Foundry. And I think that's really important for you to kind of understand if you're looking at applying to grad school or you're looking to make a big move or things like that. Just make sure you think your bandwidth can support support that. But one of the great things is there is a sense of community here. So when I'm busy, I can turn and folks like Llama and Grant kind of help pick up what maybe I'm not able to support and vice versa. So it's not always 10 hours a week, if that seems like a big number to you. But consistent interaction is really what we're going to be looking for. And then how can you make your application stronger? I think it's important for you to show, your interest and passion for internet law and policy. That doesn't mean you have to have worked in the space, but if you're part of different groups or you've been to events or you've authored a paper, let us know. And you can certainly make sure those are communicated on your CV as well as your written responses to the application. And then just demonstrate, your commitment to the Foundry and its mission. It's really about connecting those of us that are in our early to mid career, that want to talk about these really important topics across internet policy, whether it's human rights oriented, national security oriented. So just kind of show that, what are you about and what are you excited for? And I will hand it back over to Llama. I think we have Q&A.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone, for the great presentation. So we have a couple of questions from both LinkedIn and the Zoom Q&A. So anyone who's watching on LinkedIn, please feel free to just put your questions into the comments. We are refreshing and monitoring. So the first question that we saw on LinkedIn was, can professional references be academic professors? That is absolutely appropriate. You can have your academic references from a supervisor, someone you work with at work, a peer, your professor. Really, we're looking for people who can speak about your passion and interest in the field, why the Foundry is a good fit for you, what you will get out of the Foundry for your professional and academic goals, sort of talk to your personality and work style, and some of the previous work experiences that you may have had. Some other questions that we want to be able to flag. One, Grant is answering. The one by Gabe is specifically if you're in the US, but you're not in a hub. Even if you're not in a hub, you can still certainly apply. Grant is a perfect example of not being in a specific hub, but he still comes to Foundry events. He's still very involved, and we're so happy to have him. People in different non-centric US hubs have a lot to offer to the Foundry, and we certainly want as many voices as we can.
Yeah, and I would add, Llama, too, I spend maybe 70-80% of my time now in Chicago, which is not a hub. And so I do go to DC quite a bit for work and other things, which is nice. But I think as long as you're willing to reach out and just stay connected and active, that's really important. I think the hub idea is really, we're looking at how can we get programming together for you as a fellow to have the most enriching experience. So think of it that way. But if you're not part of the hub and you're a competitive applicant, of course, we're going to consider you strongly. And so don't think of it as a deterrent if you're not in one of the kind of the hubs that we listed on the application. But those are, where we've seen historically a lot of our fellows be based.
Yeah, exactly. And then there was another question that said, are individuals who are not based on the coastal states still encouraged to apply? Yes, you don't have to be in the United States. Again, anybody from anywhere can apply. We just unfortunately operate primarily in the Eastern time zone. Our parent company, the Internet Education Foundation, is based in Washington, DC, and a majority of our fellows sort of work within the Northeastern time zone. It's just a little bit easier for everyone to collaborate. But yeah, those are sort of all our questions. We will leave room for more in the next couple of minutes. But I wanted to ask Ricky and Grant, how did you find the Foundry, and has it met up to your expectations?
Yeah, I'm happy to go. And then we also have some things in the Q&A chat that we can take after Grant answers as well. So I've done some other fellowships, things, I won't name names because we're all about the Foundry here today, but things very geopolitically focused. And so I was looking for something that was more internet aligned. And one of the communities that I'm part of, sent out a list of fellowships that opened up, and the Foundries was on there. And when I kind of read not only what the Foundry was about and how they came together, understanding the importance some of the alumni have played just in the spaces I want to work in. I really was drawn to the Foundry that way. And so I think, it worked out as fortuitous that some of the other broader communities within DC and outside of DC that focus on internet policy are aware of the Foundry and what we're trying to do. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. I would just reiterate what Ricky was saying. And for me, I had been aware of the Foundry's events prior to becoming a fellow, particularly Tech Policy Grind, our podcast, and the trivia night that the Foundry hosted. And to know that I was possibly able to join a network of people who were running these really cool events was just really awesome. And now that I'm a fellow, I get to participate in that and get to work with some of my peers. And it's just been incredibly enriching. So I'm very happy to be helping out with that.
Awesome, thanks. We have a couple more questions in the Q&A that we would be happy to answer. So one of the questions is, I think I missed the explanation about the difference between junior fellows and the original fellowship. Would junior fellows eventually become regular fellows? Yes. So the reason why we decided to do the junior fellowship is because originally the ILPF Foundry Fellowship was over the course of 2 years. And usually in a 2-year time period, people can go back to school, they can graduate, they can switch jobs and get promoted, and their original commitment can change. And because we've had such great momentum in the first year, we wanted to be able to keep that up by sort of applying more power from newer and fresher voices. That's why we started the junior fellowship. And to also allow for a smoother transition. When things are operating entirely virtually, it's a little bit difficult to sort of allow people to learn things hands-on. And so we thought that in this junior fellowship, you can learn from the things that the senior fellows are doing, and you have a whole year to learn how social media works, how to design graphics, how our podcast works, access to our emails and social media channels. And in your second year, you will be a senior fellow, we would have graduated, and then you'd have your own junior fellows who will work to support you. And then you'll be able to take the Foundry Fellowship on your own.
Yeah, I would just add, Lama, there too, so from what it used to be historically was that 2-year period, they weren't overlapping at all, right? So it was 2 years, one class, and then the next, after 2 years go, the next class. So what we're doing is we're really just overlapping. And like Lama had spoken to, it's really just helping make it so it's a smoother transition, that the momentum, everybody's engaged and kind of running at full steam the whole time. And that way, when you guys eventually, those that become junior fellows, move on to become senior fellows and elect their own e-board, there's really not a wondering of how do we do the bits and bobs of running the Foundry, because you have to think about, like she said, social, event planning, finances, right? Actually getting sponsorships, all of those things. So we just want to make sure that it's not a painful process, and that helps the Foundry live on for many cycles after, we graduate.
Awesome. Another question, are references written or reached out to over the phone? If written, is the deadline also on the 30th? Ricky, do you want to take this question?
Yeah, so the way we're kind of looking at references is, and we're going to reach out, you're going to provide their information. They're not due by the 30th. I will say that. But, if we're making some decisions around, candidates, references will be a big component of how the final decisions are made. And so, like Lama said, you can use a professor, you can use a work resource as a recommender. I really, encourage you to use someone who knows you well, who can speak well to your ability to, be a strong contributor to the Foundry. And then but don't worry about them needing to have done anything by the 30th. We'll kind of do outreach as it makes sense to do so.
Perfect. And then Grant, you're answering question, could you speak to the work of the Foundry's different committees? Are you answering this question, or would you like to take it live?
I'm happy to take this one live.
Okay.
Awesome. Yeah, so we have a bunch of different committees that basically operate each of the Foundry's different flagship events and different parts of outreach. So we have an outreach committee / comms committee that handle all of our communications. They run our newsletter. They keep track of reaching out to other organizations, interfacing with partner groups, making sure that we're getting the name out about both our events and our individuals and our alumni. We have a hackathon committee, which is in charge of running the hackathon. We have a podcast committee, which runs the Tech Policy Grind podcast. We also have a website committee, which is a little smaller. We run the website, keep track of all of our kind of day-to-day operational tech pieces. And we basically just use each of the different committees to ensure that we have specific people in charge of all of our initiatives. So all of these feed up into our bigger e-board meetings. We try to make sure that everybody kind of has a direction in what they're doing. And this gives the opportunity for fellows to figure out which events and which pieces of the Foundry they want to participate in. And then they can go to those meetings and participate in those channels. But there's no requirement for Foundry fellows to have membership in a particular committee. We ask when you join what you think you may be interested in helping with, because we want to make sure that we're finding a broad spread of people to help run all of our initiatives. But we do always take suggestions for new committees, and we will kind of work with that and be flexible about it as needed.
Yep. I can speak specifically to what we do in the podcast committee. So we meet bi-weekly every Friday afternoon, and we sort of discuss what episode we're going to be releasing that week. If people have ideas for a particular episode, we have a nice content calendar that people just throw in their ideas into, and we'll be able to arrange what episodes will go out what time, depending on, if it's Cybersecurity Awareness Month, or if it's a culturally relevant month, or we have a big event coming up, and we'll sort of build our calendar from there. We'll also discuss logistics, learn how to edit and how we want to promote a particular episode. And it's pretty lax. We only meet for an hour. Those who edit and sort of speak on the podcast tend to spend a little bit more time on it, by an extra couple of 4 hours or so. The comms committee meeting, we also meet bi-weekly every Wednesday evening, and we basically discuss our newsletter, social media, and any event that needs a press release or needs to be published onto some newsletters and daybooks. And then the DEI committee meets once a month, and we basically talk about how we can enrich diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility within the Foundry. We're a very small committee, so we're hoping that in the next year we'll be able to start doing external sponsorships to sort of diversify and make the tech policy pipeline a little bit more inclusive. But I hope that was helpful. Do you want to talk about eBoard and how those elections go and sort of how we operate the Foundry?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in there. So eBoard is a group of fellows that were elected by their peers of their class to kind of sit atop all of the initiatives that the Foundry is overseeing. So that includes roles like mine, where we have president, we have vice president, operations, comms, treasurer. So there's a lot of things. And then we also have folks that are regionally focused, because it is so important for us to have interaction with those people that are in geographic proximity to us. So Lama covers, our New York area. We have a woman who covers DC, and then someone who covers West Coast, and she's been very active as well. And so we have meetings. We're meeting weekly currently. But that's going to be up to, the next class of junior fellows, when they become senior fellows, how they want to run their board in particular. The board is it's important to kind of drive strategy for the Foundry. What are we interested in? What partnerships are we pursuing? Working closely with our parent organization, IEF, because, we need to talk about funding and a lot of those important things when we want to throw events or do the hackathon for prize money. And so it is very, I would say it's a pretty involved role to do that. But it is really rewarding, because you get to see things like this, right? We're changing the operating model for how we recruit fellows and how we onboard them and all of that. So eBoard is a really good experience, and it's a good group of folks. And I think that your class of you that will become junior fellows and elect your own eBoard, will really get to know them, especially because you're going to be such a lean team that there's probably going to be a fair percentage of you that are on eBoard as well. So that's kind of how we're doing it now. But I would say, it's not a concern for your first year as junior fellows. I think it's more, what do you like to do with the Foundry? What are you excited about? And pushing that. And then when you transition into your year as senior fellows, then raising your hand if you want to step up and take a leadership role on eBoard.
Great. Thank you. We didn't actually talk about our hackathon that much. Do you want to touch base on what that process was like?
Absolutely. Yes. So the policy hackathon is, one of the hallmark events for the Foundry, right? Like the podcast is big for us. CyberCon was new for us, but the hackathon has been around for a few cycles. And so what we did this past year was not only did the traditional hackathon competition, but also a writing competition. And so meetings started, I would say, in the late first quarter of last year to early second quarter, and people were actively working on hackathon program, like a management and development, as well as trying to talk to sponsors, building out exactly what our theme was going to be, what the prompts were going to be, identifying judges, mentors. So it is a really big lift, even for a virtual event. I've had some conversations, which I won't go into in depth here, but, we might have some good sponsors this year, and folks that, junior fellows will have access to as well as part of the, the class. It's a really good turnout because you get to think about a critical internet law and policy topic and see what other people who aren't that far off in age and experience to you think about those things and interact with them. I know a handful of folks that participate in our hackathon I've had one-on-ones with since. And so it's a really good event, but it is really, really busy. I know the gentleman who runs our hackathon committee, we've spoken 3 or 4 times already this year about getting planning started pretty much now for the hackathon that won't take place until the fall. I would say, when we think beyond the hackathon and the events that the Foundry is a part of, you have State of the Net in the first part of the year. And then around the summertime is when trivia usually happens. And then towards the end of the year, you have the hackathon. So that's kind of a steady cadence of things that include virtual and in-person programming that are really important to us staying visible out in different circles, and as well as drawing in sponsorship and funding.
Great. So if there are no more questions, we are happy to end it here. As always, you are happy to reach out to us individually on LinkedIn. We are always happy to help people. And feel free to also email us. Our email is on our website. And just another reminder that our applications are due on January 30th. Thank you so much for taking your Sunday to spend time with us. And I hope you all have a great weekend.